thank you so much, Aisha, for joining us here. This is the Diaspora Rising Team Rising Together series, where we're in conversation with leaders in the End SARS movement, but also, way even beyond that. And we know you because of your work and your contributions, even, prior to the most recent uprisings. Now, for folks who don't know my guest today, Aisha Yesufu, who is oftentimes known and referred to as the hijab-wearing revolutionary. She is a Nigerian social and political activist who came into prominence for her role in speaking up on the abducted Chibok girls back in 2014. Aisha is a co-convener of the Bring Back Our Girls campaign and has been tirelessly protesting and demanding the rescue of the 276 schoolgirls who were kidnapped by terrorists in Chibok. Aisha is known for much more than that and continues to speak on a range of human rights issues in Nigeria and beyond. And she is, of course, a leading champion for our people. And so I just want to welcome you for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Opal. Thank you. It's my pleasure being here with you.
It's such an honor to have you. I admire you so much. I look to you and your leadership in all of this, and have just been just really grateful to be in conversation and relationship with you and checking in about what's going on. And so I thought it was important for us to just bring this conversation that we have, this connection that we have, to the broader public, so that folks can, be up to speed on the latest, on what's going on with the End SARS movement, what's going on in Nigeria, period, and just really the desire that we have for a new Nigeria that is one that really respects the rights of its people and really embraces what we can be and our aspirations as people. So I want to first start off with just being in conversation with you about one of the most iconic images that actually came out of some of the most recent End SARS protests is this image of you. You're raising your fist, you're in front of a group of people, and it's become really iconic and really has become a symbol that is almost synonymous with the End SARS protests. And I wonder, what you think of this, this particular moment that's captured and now in history, this iconic image, and why do you think people resonated with your leadership, or this kind of moment that has captures your leadership, your prominence, the leadership of women, of Muslim women, of Nigerian women? Why do you think that this image really moved and has galvanized so many people?
So first of all, I'm a bit surprised that the image, elicited so much the kind of reaction that it did, because I've done that several times. I mean, I've been protesting for about almost 7 years now, consistently. I mean, on my 40th birthday, I said to myself that I had become the problem of Nigeria with my silence. And I've always been somebody who is vocal, and I've always spoken up. But while I was in school as a little girl, teenager, while in school, and within my own circle, but I never spoke out on a broader on national issue, because of course I come from a poor background, and I felt I always wanted to have that financial independence, because sadly in Nigeria, when you're poor, you're faceless, nameless, and voiceless, and you're not seen as a human being. And I never wanted to have that in my adult life, the way I was so helpless, as a child. So on my 40th birthday, I said to myself, I will now speak on national issue, and that I'm going to give the next 40 years to Nigeria if God gives me another 40 years, and I'll no longer be silent. And 4 months after was when Chibok girls were abducted. I turned 40 on the 12th of December, 2013. And so countless times I've been on those. I mean, there's so many. Sometimes it's with police, sometimes to the extent my son actually calls me the fist. That's what he calls me. He said, "Mommy, the fist." And he actually made me do a logo that I did one time. I was supposed to start like a show where we'll be talking to different activists from all over the world, female activists. And my son was insisted the name had to be the fist. And I actually went ahead and we did something. So for me, I think one of the reasons why it did resonate was the fact that I think the fact that I went to the front, because let me just give a bit of background about what happened on that day.
Yes,
when the End SARS protests were called for, NSAS protests there was the first one that happened around 2017, but then not many people came out, because sometimes when you're doing protests in Nigeria, a lot of people are afraid of being shot at. Even today, NSAS protesters were shot at the National Assembly today. And so people are always scared.
Today.
And so when we did that, yeah, today, there was protest at the National Assembly, where you have the House of Representatives and the Senate. In Abuja, they went there and they were shot, they were tear gassed and shot at. And some were injured and arrested.
On November 6th.
November 6th, Friday,
wow.
November 6th,
wow.
it happened in Abuja at the seat of the National Assembly. So that's to tell you how bad it is. And so people have always, been afraid of coming out. And so so when the whole killings have been going on, and sometimes there'll be outrage on Twitter, and then it goes away. On October 1st, I was at a protest when, a few people came out. The killings are going on. And I did this video, and somehow that a lot of people said, move them, where I was saying to Nigerians, we're the most populous Black nation. But when it comes to demanding for our rights, we're always nowhere to be found. And we become, very, the least populous a nation that anybody can fight, because only a few people will come out. And so when this whole issue about a month or two ago, a young man was killed in the state called River State. The town is called Port Harcourt. And what was the offense of this young man? He refused to allow the policeman check his phone, and then he shot him 4 times and killed him. 20-year-old. And there was a video of the father, crying that what did his son do? His son didn't commit any crime. His son wasn't involved in anything, just like that. Because it's actually a crime in Nigeria for you to almost like have an iPhone, have an Apple laptop, or any kind of laptop, or even have dreadlocks or tattoo. I mean, they just come and they just kill. Yes, it's unbelievable. And so, barely some weeks after that, again, another young man was shot at in Ughelli in Delta State. All of these are in the southern part of Nigeria. He was shot and his vehicle was taken away. And so some of the youth in that time did a protest, and they were so angry. And then the whole Nigeria, everybody was angry. It's like, it's enough. Why are you killing people? Why are you killing, most especially profiling and killing young people? Right. Is it a crime to have dreadlocks? Is it a crime to have tattoo? Is it a crime to look good? Is it a crime to have an iPhone? Is it a crime to have a laptop? And so there was a call for 3 days protest. And then it started, that was on the 8th, it started on the 7th of October. In Abuja here, we did one on the 8th of October. And on the 9th of October, I didn't even know there was a protest, but there were these young Nigerians who came out and did a protest on the 9th of October. Before they barely started, the police tear gassed them, shot at them, and drove them away. And so we're so infuriated. Myself, Dr. Obiez Fasili, and Maureen Cabrit, I went to see the IG of police, and we said to him, why did this happen? They just came out to protest. So why did you do this? And then he was like, oh no, it's not going to be done again. The police is supposed to provide protection, and that's what they're going to do. So on the 10th, they insisted they were coming out. So that was why I came out on that 10th. And I almost threw out. I stayed at the back. I was just sitting down on the floor for hours. They had finished one protest and they went to see the IG of police, and they said the IG wasn't around, and they were insistent that they were going to wait until the IG comes over. And so we sat down on the floor. I was at the back until this moment when the police now put themselves together in a line, cocked their guns and everything. And so that was when I left the back, and I came to the front, and I stood there and I said to them, if you're going to shoot them, then you have to shoot me first. What did they do? These are young Nigerians that we all have failed by not giving them an enabling environment. Within the failed system, they have found niches for themselves, and they're thriving, and yet we are coming after them. And sometimes the police are looking, oh, why are you as a young person? Why do you have this expensive phone in code? I'm like, it's not their fault that you are still with your 9-to-5 job. It's not their fault that the world have changed. It's not their fault that they have remote jobs that they do. These are young Nigerians who, some of them are either creatives, tech savvy, doing one or two things, and just excelling in their little niches with all that has been going on. And most times they normally don't care about what is happening in Nigeria. They are always focused on just surviving and getting things done. And then now you're killing them amongst that. And so I just kept talking and talking. And that was when they took that picture. So there was one, we took a knee, we stood up, we're like, you're going to shoot us and everything. So it took almost like about an hour or two, all of that. And then sort of the police now came down, calmed down, and they went to sit down. And we also sat at one time. We even started laughing and joking and like, oh, okay, you two have, you're sitting down there somewhere like, oh no, we're not going to do anything. Because to be frank, if you meet the police one-on-one, like they feel the pain, because they too feel the pain of what we are protesting for. They know the country the way it is. But most time, but when they get those orders from above, they call them orders from above, then you see them, they go wild. And so we just sat down. So after almost like close to 2 hours of that standoff, I felt, okay, things had quietened down. I hadn't prayed, so I went to the back and I went to pray. And as soon as I finished praying, I came out. I hadn't eaten all day because I had just started a particular sort of like diet on that day. And I felt like, no, I'm just starting this diet and I'm going to be very serious. I'm not going to eat anything, because I didn't know the protest was going to take all that long. But they insisted they were going to stay there. If the IG of police doesn't come, that they were going to sleep there. So I felt, okay, I will hang on. So I hadn't eaten, but a friend of mine now brought smoothie for me. So I was just trying to take that. The next day, I just had the shot, the fired tear gas canister, and then the gunshots and everything, and everybody started running. So I just moved to one side, and then the fumes of the tear gas was getting at me. There was this food that somebody had given me. It said, you have to eat. You hadn't eaten all day. And then I had that in my hand with my smoothie. Then I picked, there's this sachet water. I picked it and I washed my eyes, because then my eyes were burning, my throat, everything. And so I just raised my hand up and I started walking. So while I was walking away, they started shooting. I could hear the shots coming at me. Some of the canisters were landing near me and everything. And I raised my hand and I just walked out slowly. And so one of the unintended, should I say, consequences that came out of that was the fact that all the protesters were able to run away. So the police couldn't go after them. Even though for me, my one was that I'm not going to run. If you're going to shoot me, shoot me. I'm going to walk out of here slowly and meet the others. And but because I was walking slowly, so they couldn't chase after the protesters, all of them. So they had enough time to be able to run away. And I just came out of there. And as soon as I came, there is this wire and a fence that they have. I walked out of there. About 4 or 5 policemen came at me. And they had this bottled water. They started throwing it at me. And then one of them looked at me and cursed me. And I looked at him back and I cursed him back like, hey, I grew up in the ghetto. If you're going to talk about curses, we know how to do it. So you can't just look at me. And then at that moment, I could see fear in his eyes. I'm sure he was wondering, what kind of a crazy woman is this? She's all alone. Everybody had run off. 4 or 5 of us, and yet she still had to go. So at that moment, I knew I had mentally defeated him. And I looked at him and I walked away. And then some of the protesters now came back, joined me a bit, and we started walking. And so we were on 2 sides of the road. And then the next thing they came, they were throwing, they were shooting and everything. And we're able to walk away. But so I think for me, it's just the fact that, I don't even know why that picture, because I have several of such pictures that I have. I'm always having my hand up there in the air. But there was something that was quite instructive for me, was that when we had finished, when we went, because after that, I had to now go and get my car, our cars, the police slashed the tires of our cars. We had to fix the tires and everything. What? So I was offline. And then they slashed it. And that's not the only thing.
I've been hearing that, but I didn't know if it was, to the extent if it was true.
No, it was true. For me, the first day they slashed a tire each of the car. Then the second day they slashed 2 tires. I lost 3 tires. They viciously used their knife to cut it. And even at one time, I felt as if, did they tamper with our brakes? Because when I was driving back, I had issues with my brake. Another person also complained that he was having issues with his brake. And so it was just something else. So I was offline. So, and then there was some of the reports that were coming that people were saying that, oh, the police had attacked me, they had beaten me. Because if you're far away, the way they came at me, you actually think they were beating me because they were throwing those things at me. And then they felt bad. They felt bad that they had all run away without waiting. And I could see some of them were beating themselves up. And I said to them, no, that was the best thing you could do for me. By all of you running to safety, it meant that I didn't have anybody to worry about other than myself. And for me, that's the biggest gift you could give me. I knew everyone was safe, because before I left there, I knew nobody was in that place. So everybody had gone. And the fact that I was walking so slowly, they couldn't go after you. So they had to stay behind me, and we're doing all of that. So, and I said to them, no, please don't feel bad. You guys did the best thing. The best gift you could have given me was all of you running to safety. And then the only person I needed to bother about was myself. And I could stand up to them. But then if I would just add quickly, a few days later, when we went to the National Assembly, I can't remember the date, I think that was either on the 12th or 13th, we did a protest. They brought in the military. And the military initially, so I had moved because I wasn't feeling too strong. And that's the thing, in all of this, I wasn't really feeling too strong. So on that protest, I couldn't even walk as much again. So I was in a car. I had driven to the National Assembly, and then they were walking to, they were almost at the National Assembly. Then the next thing, 2 truckloads of soldiers came in, and they started. So I had to drive back, and join them. They started attacking and everything, hitting people, and all of that with their guns. I knew their guns were cocked. They were ready to shoot. And I keep saying to people, probably National Assembly would have been the first time that the military would have killed people. So as soon as I came in, one of the soldiers actually kicked me. I didn't even bother. Yes, kicked me on my hip. Oh. One of the protesters was so angry. He ran. I had to hold him. I'm like, no, not on my watch are these people going to shoot and kill. To just leave him. I had to focus on that. Like, no, I didn't want any tragedy here. We came here to protest, and that's what we're going to do. So at that moment, I didn't have time to just focus on myself, because even my sister, one of my sisters, when they told her that a soldier had kicked me, she was like, no, a soldier can't kick her. Rather, they beat up each other, because she knows on a normal day, if I was alone in that place and it was all about me, he kicks me, I'm going to kick him back, and we're going to have that fight. But I've said to someone, I said, look, get me a picture of that soldier. When all of this is out, I'm going to look for him. And then we would decide. I would need to make my boxing coach proud on that day.
Mm. Wow, sister. Oh my goodness, the courage, the bravery, the dignity with which you carry yourself is remarkable. It is legendary now, and it's so good to hear the full story, because I think what oftentimes happens is that we just know a snippet, or we just see a picture and that's it, and it becomes something nice. But for me, what's so important about hearing the full story, what happened, why were you there, what really occurred after the cameras were gone, I think it's really important for folks to know, because oftentimes what happens in these moments and in movements, period, is that an image is captured of a moment, and it becomes symbolic. However, you don't know the story behind it, or you don't know if it matches the actual experience, or if it correlates with the actual leaders of a movement. Or, I know the movement is broad. I know it's decentralized. I know all those sorts of things. However, there are people who have a background, a history, who've been doing the work, who've been kind of helping to lead up to moments like this. And sometimes the images don't capture them. And so it's really powerful to know that, your story is in some ways, is being documented, but it's also just really important for us to know who you are and the kind of character you have, and that you do stand up for yourself, which is amazing and powerful and important as a woman. But it's also amazing just how you look out for your people and your community. And it's not lost on me that it's tremendous cost to you. You know, there's real sacrifice. There may be, you know, real concerns that you have for your own safety and well-being. And I, you know, I don't like to think about, you know, us as Black women, as Nigerian women, you know, as people who have no fear or who don't need protecting. However, what you're showing us is that, you know, we're courageous too, and that, hey, we are also the defenders of our community, and we also show people how, you know, to step up and how to lead. So I just, you know, commend you. I appreciate you for just sharing the fullness, you know, of your story. And I know there's even much, there's more, there's way more to it. So I do want to actually talk a little bit more, because I think what is so important and so valuable about your leadership is that you've been in this. This isn't new to you. This didn't happen overnight. And so I'm thinking back at, you know, just the Bring Back Our Girls, you know, movement, the platform. You know, I was actually also a part of that movement here in the US, mobilizing people, fundraising, you know, speaking out, going to rallies in New York, all of that. That was, you know, part of what I was doing. And even, you know, just raising different concerns around Boko Haram even before that. So that's been something that has been on my heart. But you know, I want to think back to your own experience directly on the ground there in Nigeria. And are there things that we should know that helps to keep people, you know, engaged and hopeful? Because, you know, you've had this experience with something that, you know, Bring Back Our Girls brought international attention to what was happening in Nigeria. And we know that, you know, the missing girls, this wasn't the first time, it was not the last time. Sadly, our young girls, our young women are faced with a myriad of challenges and are extremely vulnerable and subject to victimization in Nigeria on so many different fronts. However, I think the movement on the ground and the attention that you were able to call to what was happening was so critical. And so I'm wondering, is there, you know, are there lessons for us to be learning and to be garnering from the movement and from the work that you would engage with and help to initiate with, you know, almost 6 years ago now?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to sort of like go back a bit in time to when it all started. Yeah. Okay. Like I said earlier, I had just made a pact with myself that I was ready to give my 40 more years if I get that to Nigeria. And 4 months later, Chibok girls were taken away. For me, the first moment when I went for that first Bring Back Our Girls march on the 30th of April, 2014, it was all about the fact that I'm a mother and I have 2 children. And one of them, I had a teenager, the other one, she was preteen. She was 12 at the time. My youngest child was 12 when Chibok girls abduction happened. And so I went there, you know, the pain of if it was my own children that were taken, definitely I'm not going to stay at home. But barely a month into the campaign, and I always used to, let me just show you something here. I have 2 red wristbands. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh yes, I see those there.
So these 2 red, yes. So these 2 red wristbands, I've been wearing them since May 2014. And so one of them had something written on it with the Chibok girls and the date they were abducted. And so when they were shared at Unity Fountain to the members of Bring Back Our Girls, and I wore the 2. One was given to us there, one was given to me by a friend. And I said to myself, I'm not going to remove this thing until all the girls are back. And I tell you, I never knew it was going to be more than a week or maximum 2. I remember when we wanted to have the name inscribed BBOG on this thing, and I went to the friend who had given me the one with writing, and the printer said it's going to take 2 weeks. And I said to him, we don't have 2 weeks because the girls, all of them should be back before 2 weeks. And it's almost 7 years now. So when we started the advocacy, every day we come out and everything, I realized that I was no longer there because of my children. I was there because of the little girl that I was. I'm a Nigerian from the southern part of the country, but I was born and brought up in the northern part of the country. And I grew up in a ghetto. And my father had a business, he was doing very well, then he lost everything and we became desperately poor. And when we lived in the ghetto, in the morning, I would go to school without breakfast. Coming back home, I wasn't expecting lunch. But I wanted to be educated. All my girlfriends, all my mates were married off at the age of 11. By the time I was 11, they were all married off. I didn't have a friend. And so, but I wanted to be educated and I wanted to go to school. And I was very adamant about that. And so I got married at the age of 24. Guess what? My friends were grandmothers at that age. So there was a lot of, backlash and a lot of mockery because of the fact that I was this old maid who wasn't married. My friends were all grandmothers and all of that. So I knew what it was for Chibok girls to be in school. And I said to people, if I was taken away when I was writing my SSC, I wrote my exam, the same exam Chibok girls were writing. I wrote it in 1991. And I said, if I was taken away in 1991, my parents would never have been able to say anything because they were poor. And sadly, in Nigeria, when you're poor, you're faithless, nameless, and voiceless, and you're not seen as a human being. Nothing, the system doesn't even recognize that you exist, except when it's during election. So I said, if I was taken away at that moment, my parents would never have been able to say anything. And if nobody stand up for me, then that means I probably will be dead by now. And I said to myself, even if it takes, in that May 2014, I said to myself, even if it takes 20 years of my life, I'm going to keep fighting for Chibok girls. Because if I give up on Chibok girls, it will mean that I gave up on the little girl that I was, who was asking for help, who was crying out to be helped, and nobody helped her. And while I was in 1991, when I was writing that particular exam, I didn't have books. And I would beg people to give me books, but nobody gave me. And I said, I can't give up on Chibok girls because that's who I am. And I always would say in 2014, I said, I'm the Chibok girls 23 years ago. Wow. And the Chibok girls grew up in a place where it's the most educationally backward region in Nigeria. And children weren't sent to school, most especially girls were not sent to school. And these were girls, their parents had sent them to school, and now they've been abducted. In 2014, one of the Chibok fathers at the Unity Fountain said to us that the government used to fine them for not sending their children to school. And that now that they have sent their children to school and their children have been taken away, who is going to fine the government? And so that was so, and you're looking at the fact that no parent should ever be put in a position where they have to think between the safety of their children and the education of their children. That's a very, it's the most heinous place you can put a parent to make those choices. And we were coming from a point where the government, just like what happened with the Lekki shooting, the Nigerian government is trying to deny it. That was what they did also with the Bring Back Our Girls, the Chibok girls abduction. They first of all denied it. The parents insisted and said their children were taken away. Then the military came out to say that all had been rescued but 8. And the parents said they hadn't seen their children. And so because of that, there are many people, even up to today, who will say to you, oh, Chibok girls abduction never happened. And one of the mothers, Mrs. Rebecca Samuel, she would always say, anytime she hears people saying that Chibok girls abduction never happened, she asks herself whether her 18-year-old daughter never existed. Because she has an 18-year-old daughter she sent to school who never came back home. And here are people saying that the abduction was a lie. So for me, this was one of the main things where I felt like, oh no. And it was so, for me, it was personal. A lot of people said, oh, why do you take Chibok girls abduction so personal? Are you the only one in the movement? I say, yes, to me, it's personal. Because unfortunately, and also fortunately, what it did for me, it forced me to relive my childhood. And you know something about life, when you're trying to survive, because I got to a place here, after school, I'm a businesswoman. That's what I've always done. I've not worked for anyone. I've always been doing business, and I've focused on financial independence, and I got all of that and everything. But I never had time to relive my childhood because it was a painful part I had to keep away. But the Chibok girls abduction brought everything to the fore for me. And I remember this day, there's also a picture of mine that was taken at that time. Maybe I will send it to you so that I'll look for that picture. I think it even came out on the Economy.
Please
so
send
I had this picture. Yeah, I will. So I was like this. And that was the day I I cried. And my sister, whom, you know, in the Africa setting, I'm the firstborn, you take care of all your younger ones. And I will say something about that and explain it to put it in context with the Chibok girls. My sister, who I'm 10 years older than her, when she finished secondary school, she was sent to me. So she has lived with me for close to 18 years now. And so she finished, I put her through school, university, and everything. And she said she has never, I've always been the strong one in the family, even as the firstborn. I had to, because my parents didn't have a boy until the fifth born. First child, I'm a girl, I had sisters, so I had to protect them. When you take away the child of the poor, you take away everything. You take away a generation. You sort of like slash the lineage, because the poor have nothing other than their children. The poor don't have assets. They don't have investment. They don't have riches. Everything they have, they pour it into their children. Everything is there. And the children are supposed to grow up and be their pension, and also take care of the junior, of the younger ones. And so for most of the Chibok girls, they're actually the firstborn in their families. And firstborn in Africa, normally you're the one who bears the burden. You have to take care of your junior ones, your siblings, you have to take care of your parents. And so everything is dependent on you. Just for me to let you know what it was, in 2014, my mom called me and she said to me, "Thank you for dreaming for the whole family." Because even though while we were in the ghetto, even though when we had nothing, there were days we had nothing to eat, I had big dreams. And I was so determined. And I was so focused. When I say blind focus was what I had in saying I needed to leave this ghetto. I needed to get the education. I needed to be able to take care of myself and my family. And that's why for the first 40 years of my life, I couldn't focus on national issue. I had to focus on survival, on getting not just myself, but my siblings and everyone out of that vicious circle of poverty. And to be the easiest way to break the vicious circle of poverty, the intergenerational poverty, is through education. And that was simply what the Chibok girls were after. One of the Chibok mothers in 2014 said to us that her daughter promised her that she was going to get to school, get education, and be able to take care of her. And she asked us, "Is it with the terrorists that my daughter is taking care of me?" And so just listening to her, because she had everything in her daughter, waiting for her daughter to finish university, get a job, come one day, take care of her, be that pension. The children of the poor are their pension. They don't have any other thing. And then everything was just taken away, and they were just sort of like forgotten, as if they didn't matter. The government didn't want to do anything. But one of the key things that, one, it was a movement that was women-led. And even NSAS too, women played a great role. The feminist coalition were amazing. And I will tell you, instrumental in how far this protest went. The Bring Back Our Girls movement was also a movement that was women-led. And it was a movement where we said we would not accept anything from anyone. There were a lot of organizations, even within the individuals who wanted to contribute money, donate to the movement. But we said, no, want money. What we want is empathy. Show the empathy, speak up for the Chibok girls. And we said we will put our money where our empathy is. And for me, for the Bring Back Our Girls movement, that was so instrumental. And I will tell you, that's the reason why almost 7 years later, we are still on, we're still making the man. No focus is a singularity of purpose. We're focused on one issue, Chibok girls. 276 of them were taken away. 57 escaped immediately, and we had 219 for over 2 years. In May 2016, the first girl was found, Amina Ali in Keki, and she escaped and came back. You know, we had been mocked, we had been told several times that, or even the government said to us, go away, all the girls are there, they won't come back, all of that. We stayed on. And today we have 107 Chibok girls back with 112 that are still in captivity.
If you could share with us a little bit more about the Bring Back Our Girls movement and how instrumental it is for women leaders to be part of that, but you were also making a connection to the NSARS movement and how critical of the role of women, of feminists, feminist coalition
Yeah.
beyond have been in these social movements in Nigeria.
Oh, okay. Yes. Also fantastic. So like I was saying, just having bring back our girls movement, being women led, really played an important part. And the fact that we refuse to accept any money from anyone, it's a self-funded movement. We decided that we're going to put our money where our empathy was, and so it's all amongst ourselves. We did what we had to do, and people were ready to sacrifice. And that's always the case where, instead of, we didn't have any distraction focusing on anything or trying to, there are some donors, you have to tell them what, no, we didn't have that. And so we had that focus on the singularity of purpose, which was bring back our girls. And we kept that going. And so that also played a great impact too in the NSAS movement. There were a lot of feminist coalition were amazing. And I tell you, without them, it wouldn't have gone as far as it did. I would say, like, for someone who has been on different protests in Nigeria, I've been for the last almost 7 years, and I've been on the front, it wouldn't have gone anywhere. But they played this tremendous part. And there were so many women leadership amongst the organizers. And it was really amazing just seeing that. And I think one of the things, like, I remember one of the days during that 2 weeks of protest, I said, look, we need to go from feminism to femi power. I mean, women need to really forget the little voices that were implanted in our heads where we're told that we can't be certain things, and just go in there and be in power, and be in the position of power. We've seen COVID-19 where the countries that did best in terms of being prepared, in terms of tackling on the COVID-19 pandemic that we had, were actually women-led countries. And so it's time for us to no longer seek for permission to do something. It's time for us to own our spaces and don't ask for a place at the table. They actually create our own table and get to say who gets to be at that particular table. So having women in this really helped, and not just at the Bring Back Our movement and the NSAS, even in every other thing that had to do with sacrifice. Most times you find that it's the women that are always there. I find that it's when it comes to where there's going to be money that you find other people going in. But when it comes to issue of sacrifice and just giving back without expecting anything, I mean, I think women do that a whole lot.
Yeah, I find that to be absolutely true in my own experience. In the work that we're doing here on the state side or mobilizing the diaspora, the women are always the first to get involved, the first to contribute, the first to really truly sacrifice time, energy, themselves. And I believe because we so acutely experience the impact of the injustices from many different angles, right? From there's this conversation around intersections in the US and in different parts where, race, gender, religious, identities, sexuality, all of these, aspects of who we are plays a role in terms of oppression. However, what I find is that it's our strength because we understand how significant it is for us to seek and get justice. And so it does seem to me that women do oftentimes, lead by virtue of not having any choice, right? Because if we don't, who will? Who's going to speak for us, for our children, for our neighbors, for our community, and so on. And it feels, I completely agree with you. In some ways, it's high time. Let's just create, the vehicles, the tables, what we need to ensure that our lives, matter, that we're protected, and that our communities have the opportunity to thrive. So, thank you so much for making those connections so clear for us. We're kind of approaching the end of our time, but I really would love for us to at least begin to talk about what's happening with people now, specifically with protesters, with people who had the audacity to say, hey, enough is enough, end SARS, end SWAT, end police brutality. It seems to me that we're seeing different types of pushback against the movement, after Lekki massacre and all, other acts of brutality and violence and extrajudicial killing that happened across Nigeria. It seems that, that really hurt the movement. or it really was a message that was being sent that the movement should stop, should fall back. And while I know that the movement is far from over, people are still, obviously working behind the scenes and doing a lot of tremendous work, it still seems that, journalists are being attacked. It seems that, activists are being attacked. People are having their passports confiscated. There's been a massacre, and then there's other things that are happening. And even what you spoke about earlier, which is today, November 6th, at the assembly, there's still this tear gas. There's still this violence against people who are speaking out. So can you tell us a little bit about what is going on? Even right now? I just mentioned those notes that I've heard, but it would be great to hear from you firsthand what's occurring. I even heard Amnesty International, there's a group that's trying to call for them to stop. There's just seems to be a lot of pushback, a lot of efforts to suppress our voices in Nigeria.
It's almost sadly, that's what we've gotten used to in Nigeria. The killings are always the harassment, the stopping people from talking. And over the years, there has been this sort of like, people have sort of like given up on everything, giving up on themselves, giving up on the nation, just feel nothing is going to happen. And I tell you, NSAS has changed that. There's an awakening. There was despondency in the air. People are like, oh, okay, we're just waiting, whatever happens. But now people are kicking back and fighting back. And I think that's one of the most amazing things that NSAS movement did, was for Nigerians to get pride in themselves and in their country, and know that, yes, indeed, they have a voice and they're ready to use that voice now. And I'm so sorry for the government, because they don't even realize half of it. The NSAS protest was a protest of survivor. It was my friend Florence also who made me to put that connection together, where she said, when we did the BBOG protest, Bring Back Our Girls protest, and all the other protests, they've always been protests of empathy. You felt something, oh no, something had happened, girls had been abducted, this had happened, you come. But in the case of NSAS protest, it was a protest of survivor, where many of the people that were there were either victims or friends to victims, or people who had once been victims, or they had loved ones who were victims. And some people were actually victims many times over. And it was just Nigerians coming out to say, look, we're being killed in the cover of darkness. Please stop killing us. And then the government decided that they were going to kill. Killings have been going on before NSAS protests. Killings were going on during NSAS protests. Killings have been going on after NSAS protests. One of a young reporter, recently a young journalist who filmed some of the protests around Lagos. There was even one video he did of a politician who shot at protesters and killed 2 of them. He was arrested by police, and then the media house he worked for, they were demanding and saying he's not he's a reporter. He was reporting. He's a journalist. He was reporting and everything. And guess what? The guy turned up dead. He died in police custody. All for them to say the parents should come and pick his body. And so people were killed before protest, killed during protest, killed after protest, and people know they're going to be more brutal. In Nigeria, on a normal day, a policeman will say to you, I will waste you and nothing will happen. I will kill you and the president will not do anything. And on the 20th of October, 2020, indeed, the government showed us why they will make these statements and get away with it. Protesters, peaceful protesters who had just gone with just their flags and singing the national anthem, were killed, were massacred by the Nigerian government. And not only massacred, they tried to hide that. And a lot of people have become emboldened. A lot of people have gotten their voices. It's just like the educated mind. The mind, once educated, can never go back to the state it was before. And so it's the same way, a voice once awakened can never go back to the docile state that it used to be before. And that's one of the things that have really come out right now. It might seem as if, okay, the movement, the protests aren't going on the way they were before. Everything is all about being strategic. And right now we have a government that is just ready to just shoot and kill and everything. And the protesters, what they are doing is to strategize on the different ways to keep protesting. And most importantly, they are understanding the fact that for us to fix Nigeria, we have to fix politics. And they are ready to look at, go into politics, try to get the right kind of people into offices so that at the end of the day, they'll be able to have good governance and they'll be able to have reforms, real reforms, systemic changes. Because what we have right now has been systemic operation that has been going on for a very long time. And I tell you something, Opal, if you hear the stories that are coming out of the panels, this is unbelievable. As a Nigerian, I am truly shocked. I am shocked that a lot of people were being abused in this way and we didn't get to know about it. You talk about the one where someone is thrown from maybe 3 floors by police, someone arrested and thrown in, a father made to check, go to rivers. They actually have rivers where bodies are dumped, and a father was forced to go in and keep flipping just to check for his own child. After he was made to sell his properties and he gave the police the money and they say it was chicken change. And this is it's 8 years now since 2012. They haven't seen, he hasn't seen his son. They just told him, oh, they killed him and that's it. If you see the number of stories that are coming out, it's unbelievable. And for us to say we lived in a country where people were actually, those who were paid to look to safeguard the people, to protect them from robbery, actually turned out to be robbers and also killers. It's really unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. It's unconscionable, and true to what you said. I know that I feel, even, you know, as a Nigerian living in the diaspora, I feel, you know, over the years as I've traveled, I've always felt the fear, the threat, you know, being stopped by police at any given moment. You don't know what's going to happen. I've heard countless stories. I've had, you know, relatives who've died, you know, like there's just, we know this, you know, between the impunity, you know, the high degree of impunity, we just never know what day you might meet one of these kinds of officers and all of that. So the uncertainty around it all is awful. It's terrifying. And quite honestly, we should never have ever gotten to this point, ever. And it's despicable that we would have a government that would essentially be silent, that would allow for this to fester for so long. These stories that you're even sharing with me now, you know, I'm holding back my own tears, because every single one I hear, I am just like, no one should have ever experienced that. And it could have been any one of us. It's not lost on me that that could have been my family or my loved one, or my brother or my sister. You know, it's not lost on me that that could be any one of us. And I think that's what has become so clear and so evident to not only us in Nigeria, but people around the world, where we're like, you know, enough. This should never have gotten to this point. One life lost is enough. However, the hundreds of, you know, the documentation of so many people, and as you're sharing on these panels, these types of stories that are coming out, because so many people were also scared to share their stories. And that's what I'm looking at Amnesty International now, facing this kind of threat, these attacks, you know, a very reputable international organization that people know stands for human rights and does really exceptional work. And they're coming under threat, but that's because they've been documenting some of these stories. But so many people haven't even shared their story yet because they were scared. And rightfully so, as you've stated, people are rightfully scared, and it's we know that we should not have to be. And so I think what was so empowering, what's so beautiful, was that the process that happened showed that we were in it together, that people should not be afraid to speak up and speak out. Yes, now we've seen the massacre, and so there's different strategies, and we have to shift tactics and approach.
In Nigeria, we are not living, we are merely surviving. Every day you're scared for your life. You don't know what's going to be next. It's either you're killed by terrorists, or you're killed by bandits, or you're killed by killer headsmen, or you're killed by kidnappers. And then you can also be killed by your government. It's so sad that the NSAS protesters who came out peacefully and showed great organization, the NSAS protesters are youth who we have failed, but yet they were able to strive for themselves and find niches where they would grow, and we didn't allow them. They came out to protest in the most peaceful manner. They organized themselves. They had welfare. They fed people. They took care of their own security and their own health care. There was logistics. Everything was done perfect. They were protesting and also negotiating with the government. They were both at the table and also on the street because they are always used to multitasking. Those are people who came out and they were never just for them. They were able to find jobs for them and own their own businesses. We were not able to protect them. And what did we do? What did the government do? The government came up and went on to kill them. And it's really sad that in Nigeria, being a victim is no longer a matter of if, it is a matter of when. Yesterday's victims were once survivors. Today's victims were yesterday's survivors. And tomorrow's victims will be today's survivors. Those who have been killed will not be killed again. The next to be killed are those of us that are alive. And the question is, who is next? As long as we do nothing, as long as we are silent, we embolden those who kill to go on killing. And we give enabling environment for the government to abdicate its responsibilities. Nigerians pray to God and leave their, Nigerians fight for God and leave their fight to God. Who does that? We have to come out. People have to stand up and speak. And the youth, that's exactly what they did. And they were killed. And we must ensure that this country will continue to fight for it. We continue to fight so that we get a Nigeria where the child of nobody can become somebody without knowing anybody. We get a Nigeria that we'll all be proud of. And the only way we can get it is all of us working together, standing by our nation, not because it's easy, but because it has to be done.
Thank you. That is exactly it. Not because it's easy, but it has to be done. You know, enough is enough. We've seen far too much impunity. We have far too much brilliance in Nigeria. We have far too many resources and people. And so we need it to work for all of us, for all Nigerians. It is high time. So I just want to appreciate you and thank you so much for being in conversation with me, being so candid, for your courage, for your example. I believe that you are showing a generation of people, not only in Nigeria, but around the globe, what it means to work, to fight, to contribute, to build the type of nation that we deserve. So thank you so much. We are 100% with you. The diaspora stands with you. We have a vested interest in the outcome of having a nation that works. So many of us are living in different parts because we don't have a nation that works, right? So we're vested in making sure that Nigeria is functional and that our friends, our family, our loved ones are able to do more than just survive, right? Nigeria is way too rich for us to just merely survive. We should all be thriving. We should all be thriving. So thank you so much for the work that you do, for your leadership.
Thank you.
For your sacrifice.
Thank you.
Always know that we're here.
Thank you so much for everything. Thank you for the love.
Absolutely. Always, sister. Always.